Well, good morning. Today we are going to talk about a very interesting topic, what implication has religion has in the history of the United Kingdom, and how we compare it with the history of our country, Colombia, to talk about his topic we are joined today by Alejandra, Valentina, Mariana, and me, Nicolás.
Good morning. Yes, and before we start, I think it is important to say that this topic might seem a little complicated, but religion has actually been present in many important moments throughout the history.
Exactly, Alejandra. I think so because when you hear the word religion, you usually think about your personal belief. But when you start studying history, you realize that it has also influenced politics, education, culture, and even how a society is organized.
Yes, I agree. The United Kingdom is a good example because religion had a big influence on its history, especially the conflict between Catholics and Protestants.
Yeah, exactly. And one of the most important events was the Protestant Reformation. For example, there is the case of Henry VIII, who broke away from the Catholic Church and established the Church of England.
Yes, also there's something interesting about it, Nicholas, because when you think that Henry VIII did that just for a religious difference, but really there were also political and personal reasons behind that decision.
Of course, and that shows exactly who closely relation and politics were connected. A king's decision could change the country's official relations and directly affect the entire populations.
Yes, and it also made me think of Colombia during the colonial period. The Catholic Church had a lot of power and influence.
Yes, and not only in the religion aspect, it's also had an influence on education, custom, and people's daily life. In fact, many traditions that we still have today come from that period.
Exactly, Nicolas. And I think that is one of the first similarities we can find between Colombia and the United Kingdom. In both countries' relations and had a presence that went far beyond the church.
Yes, there is also an important difference because in the United Kingdom there was a very strong break with the Catholic Church and the Church of England appeared, while in Colombia Catholicism remained the predominant religion for a very long time.
Yes, exactly. Even after Colombia became independent, the church continued to play an important role in society and politics.
In fact, during the 19th century, there were many discussions between liberals and conservatives about the role the church should have in the state. For example, they had different opinions about education and about how much influence religion should have on public decisions.
Exactly, and that is interesting because it shows that religion could care political division. It wasn't simply a matter of I believe in this and you believe in that. It could also influence that way people throw politically.
Yes, and something similar happens in the UK. The differences between Catholics and Protestants came to generate a quite strong conflicts, and during certain periods, they could determine even one's political opportunities.
Yes, Valentina, both countries are more diverse. Religion is still important, but its influence is different from the past.
And sometimes I find interesting is that the influence of religion was not only negative. In both Colombia and the United Kingdom, religion institutions also played an important role in education and in helping different communities.
Yes, I agree. In Colombia, for example, the church was involved in education for a long time, especially when the state did not yet have such a strong presence in the area.
And in the UK, there were also religious institutions that create a school and engage in welfare activities. So I think we can simply say that religion has good or bad consequences.
Exactly, Valentina. A religion had a both positive and negative consequence. It helped with education and communities, but it also caused conflicts.
Yes, and also over time the relationship between religion and the state began to change. Society became more diverse and people began to have a great reform to change their own belief.
In Colombia, we can clearly see this in the 1991 constitutions because it recognizes freedom of religion. So today, a person can practice different religions of even choose not to belong to any religions.
Exactly. And it is very different from what happened during the colonial era when the Catholic Church had a much more dominant presence in society.
Yes, and then the United Kingdom has also changed. The Church of England is still important, but today there is much more religious diversity.
Yes, and there are also many people who do not practice a religion. So I think we can say that religion is still important, but it's no longer have exactly the same level of influence that it had several centuries ago.
I think so too. Additionally, religion remains part of the culture of both countries today. For example, there are still celebrations, traditions, and historical sites that have a religion's origin.
Yes, yes, and this is something we can really see a lot in Colombia. Many of our celebrations, traditions, and even cultural expression are connected to Catholics, even if some people are not particularly religions.
Yes, I perceive that many tradition and historic buildings in both countries are connected to religion, so it is still part of their culture.
But there is something I would like to ask you. Do you think that religion still has political influence in Colombia and the United Kingdom today?
I would think so, but in a different way. Now it doesn't have the same direct control as before, but it can still influence many people's opinions and some social debates.
Yes, I agree, and I think this happens because religion is still important to many people. So even though there is a greater separation between religion and the state, personal beliefs can still influence political opinions.
Exactly, Valentin, Alejandra. Let me ask you something. Do you think religion still has political influence today?
Yes, and I think that is quite a big difference, no? Compared to the past, in the past, religion could have been much more involved in the decision of the state, whereas today there is a great diversity.
I also think that comparing Colombia and the UK help us to understand that not all countries experience religious influence in the same way. Each had different historical processes.
Of course. In the United Kingdom, for example, the Protestant Reformation, the creation of the Church of England, and the conflicts between Catholics and Protestants were very important.
Yes, I think people can have their own beliefs, but today the government gives more religious freedom.
But despite this difference, but countries have something in common. Religion had a very strong influence on society and helped share part of their culture identify.
Exactly. And I think that's one of the main conclusions we can draw. Religion is not only about faith, but can also influence politics, educations, customs, and culture.
Yes, and we can also see that this influence changed over time. What was normal 3 or 400 years ago can be very different from what happens today.
Yes, in Colombia, religion was very important during the colonial period, especially in education and politics.
So, if we had to answer the initial question directly, we could say that religion played a fundamental role in the history of United Kingdom, especially in its political conflict, the monarchy, and the division between Catholic and Protestant.
And in the case of Colombia, it had a very strong influence during the colony and then continued to have an importance in education, culture, politics.
Exactly. And although the process were different, in both countries relation was connected for a long time to political power and the way society was organized.
Yes, today both countries are more diverse. Religion is still important, but its influence is different from the past.
Yes, yes, I like that idea. It didn't disappear, it transformed because we can still set its influence in many traditional and cultural aspects.
Yes, and also in the way many people understand some social and political issues.
So I think we already have a very clear conclusion. Religion has been an important part of the history of both the United Kingdom and Colombia, but it is influence what has changed depending on the time period.
Comparing these two countries help understand how religion has shaped society over time.
Well, I think we can wrap up our conversation here. We hope this topic is a little clear now and that you have also learned about the difference and similitude between the United Kingdom and Colombia.
Yes, yes. Thank you very much for allowing us and for listening to your conversation.
We hope you enjoyed and found this topic interesting.
And remember, learning history helps us to understand the world we live. And thank you very much.
Bye, thank you, goodbye.
Bye.
Bye.